Hi almal, dis juffrou Nagel en ek wil julle net so 'n bietjie wenke gee oor wat om te doen met vraestel 3. So these are just a few tips for paper 3. I do not go through the format of each and every writing piece that there possibly is because that would be way too long. But I do mention a few of them. Yeah. So just the first thing is keep your sentences short. Don't use more than one conjunction. The reason you shouldn't use more than one conjunction is because sometimes when you are writing, you forget about the conjunction rules. So obviously group 1, nothing changes. Group 2, they're in relationship. So the conjunction and the verb 1 needs to be next to each other. And group 3 is the very common one that people use in writing because you want to say like wat and dat and dat and stuff like that. But when you do that, you have to remember that the conjunction and the verb 1 sort of divorces. So the verb 1 needs to move to the end of the sentence. But I think when you are rushed, you forget about that. So rather just stick to simple conjunctions, stick to one conjunction in a sentence. So your sentences don't get too long, because as soon as your sentence is too long is when there's more like language errors that actually creeps in. And then use idioms, comparisons, metaphors, and personification. You can also describe something making your own metaphors, etc. This shows that you know how to manipulate the language, and that shows that you have advanced language skills. So it is trying, like, I don't know, like, I know the one time, like, I'm just going to refer back to something that I had last year, is a girl took a picture and she basically made, like, the whole essay. It's like a personification essay type of saying, like, the sun represents a mother. And that was absolutely all like, no, the mother represents the sun. And that was absolutely amazing. And it was so good. And that showed that you could manipulate the language. So try and use things like that. If you are too scared to make your own, I'll try and leave a link in the description box. But Millie, if you basically type in Afrikaans idioms, of Afrikaanse idiome, there's a list, A to Z, is it Z or Z? I don't know, of Afrikaans idioms that you can actually use. And then you're just like trying to make your own metaphors, especially if you're going to do descriptive essay. You need to be doing things like this. Like I said, it shows advanced language skills because you can manipulate the language. Okay, and then just remember that Afrikaans is a double negative. It has to end with ni. Usually because you are translating directly from English to Afrikaans, you forget the ni at the end because you don't have that in English. So just be careful for that. Okay, here's the one about the conjunction. So when you use conjunctions, make sure that you are following the conjunction rule. Group 1, conjunction and verb 1 are vibing. Group 2, they are in a relationship. And group 3, they break up. So just like that's really something that when you are marking essays, it's very obvious. Like the conjunction rule is probably the most powerful rule in the Afrikaans language. And therefore, when you don't use the verb right, it sounds silly and it doesn't sound right. And you have to remember Afrikaans, it needs to sound right for it to be right. Okay? If you start your sentence with a conjunction, remember that the two verb ones of the two sentences meet in the middle, separated by a comma. Like I said, conjunction mistakes is a very common one. Make sure you do planning. Now, I know planning is tedious and you are like, why? But the thing is, sometimes when you don't do planning, your story doesn't actually reach an end. Or you don't actually stick to what was like expected of you. And like this happens to all people who are Afrikaans, people who aren't Afrikaans. You need to plan to know where your story starts, how it's going to develop, and how it's going to end. So do your planning. You get marks for planning as well, like to see if it sort of correlates as well. So please do planning. Make a mind map or write down in bullet points what you want to say in your essay. This will ensure that your story follows a good pattern without you going over the word counts. Because when you go over the word count, they will stop marking. And by that point, if you know there's still 2 paragraphs missing, in other words, they didn't get to mark your conclusion, actually means your story is incomplete. So you'll lose marks for structure as well. So please, like, do your planning. And then stick to the word count. Remember to add the word count in brackets at the end of each of your final writing pieces. And then follow Stompy. Now, obviously Stompy can have other, like, sort of deviations. So basically you can also have this. So Stompy, yes, but it's sometimes very boring if you basically start your sentence with the same subject the whole time. So if the person in your story's name is Susan, saying Susan the whole time is going to be very repetitive and very irritating. But just remember that you can still start with time, and then it'll be time, verb 1, SOMP, verb 2, infinitive. And that's the same for basically everything except objects. So object is the one where the sentence structure changes completely. So try to do something like this. Like vary the the way you start your sentences. Don't repeat the subject too much. If it's say the whole time, it does get boring. Now we're just going to an opstel, so the essay. Be creative when you're writing your essay. It is called creative writing, therefore you need to try and strive to be as creative as possible. Your essay should have between 5 and 8 paragraphs. This includes your intro and conclusion. The reason, therefore, is that obviously the way a thing is structured is you have your introduction, your body paragraphs, and your conclusion. Your introduction is not a brand new idea. Your conclusion is not a brand new idea. It's your body that represents brand new ideas. So if you only have 3 paragraphs, it actually shows that you only had one creative idea, essentially. So try to stick between 5 minimum and then 8 max. So introduction. Depending on the type of essay that you're writing, just keep in mind that your intro needs to introduce the main things, ideas, statements, character settings, etc. It should be short. Your introduction paragraph should not be longer than the paragraphs in your body. Okay, that's impossible. An introduction is short and sweet, gets to the point, introduces the main thing. So, like if you have characters in your story, the characters, if you are sitting in a coffee shop doing something, you would actually stay there. I am in a coffee shop observing everything that is around me. Then your body paragraphs, the very important ones. I mean, your introduction is also really important, but the body paragraphs, it sort of represents new ideas that you have. It represents the creativity. So each concept or new idea should be in a new paragraph. Like, so that's why I said, like, it shouldn't just be 1 paragraph in your body. You should have a minimum of 3 paragraphs in your body. And then conclusion, depending on the type of essay that you're writing, your conclusion should tie up any loose ends, repeat the main idea, repeat your statement, etc. Keep it short. You can also, in this, like, sort of talk about your feelings. You know, if you wrote an essay about coffee, you can say that then. I don't know why I have coffee in my head, but if you write an essay about coffee, there at the end you can just say, like, and that is why I love coffee. So it's just like tying up all the loose ends. It can make the reader think, you know, if you want them to go and think about something. The introduction and conclusion is really important. A good essay has a really good introduction and a really good conclusion. Okay, then these are the type of essays you can choose to write and some tips on each. So the first one is beschrijvend, descriptive. A descriptive essay is about something you see, hear, feel, smell, or taste. So you use your senses to describe something. Okay, so here are your senses. And then you are creating a picture in words, but you are still telling a story. Now, another very important thing is do not write a descriptive essay if you don't have a vocab. That is impossible. And also, to describe something, you must have experienced it. So if you have never been to the ocean, how do you describe the ocean? If you've never been there to smell the air, to smell or like touch the sand, you cannot describe it. Not true. So stick to that. A descriptive essay is a really impressive essay to write if you have the vocab. So another thing with beschrijvend is, like, you can't just use baie. You can't just use intensieve forme. This is really a place where you can use your own metaphors, similes, personification, you know, like sort of go crazy with the beeldspraak, the like poetic devices within this, or the figures of speech within this type of essay, because that's really impressive, and that obviously once again shows that you have a very good grasp of the language. Then verhalend, narrative. Is that narrative or narrative? I don't know. So this one is a very common one that people write. And I think it's sometimes because we believe that it's easy, but you just have to be very careful. So it just says every story needs characters, a place, time, reason, and events. Think of the plot line of any animation movie for the structure of your narrative essay. You are writing a story. So this is quite, like, I always, when I explain it to the kids in my class, I would say, like, think of the movie Frozen, when you have to think about, like, how you introduce the story. Within the first few minutes of the story, we get introduced to the main characters, the problem, Elsa cannot control her powers, okay, and obviously, like, we can introduce Olaf, blah, 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 blah. We know where it's happening, the castle or palace or whatever it is. And throughout the story, that problem that was introduced to us, aka Elsa not being able to control her powers, is solved towards the conclusion, not true? So that's why I'm saying think of animation movies. It's a really good base point to think for a narrative essay, since you are telling a story. It should be written in the past or present tense. I would say stick to past, possibly as much, but please just remember, like, stick to one tense and follow the right rules for the specific tense. So if you start your story in past tense, you cannot suddenly not have hate in your sentence, or not, like, you know, you can't just say, ek het winkels toe gegaan, ek wil klere koop, because you just mixed 2 tenses. Because the first sentence, past tense. Second one, present tense. What do you have to do with the will? You have to change it to vo. So please just keep that in mind. Stick to a tense and make sure that every sentence follows that tense rule. This also goes back to conjunctions. If you're writing a story in the past tense, you cannot have the conjunctions dan, as, wanneer, and no in your essay, because those are essentially not past tense conjunctions. Those four conjunctions need to change to TOE in the past tense. So it's very important to make sure that the whole thing is then past tense or the whole thing is present tense. I would say for telling a story, it's easy to stick to past tense. And then you should mention the things on the hand diagram in your intro, okay? So the who, when, where, what, and why, okay? And remember, your intro is still very short. It should not be too long. Then you have a spiegelen, which is like a speculative. So it represents the writer's perspectives, ideas, thoughts, and feelings about a certain subject. That is usually something you feel strongly about, okay? It tends to be very personal instead of subjective. Write about emotional reactions and feelings. Try to create the memories or feelings of the writer in the reader. Make sure that you express ideas, thoughts, or feelings that are honest and personal. So they'll give you like a statement, and then like, you know, you would sort of go into that and give your perspective on that statement. So I think the one time in one past paper, it was like that whole thing about like life is a box of chocolates. And they were sort of like going into that, what you think about that. Is life like a box of chocolates? Stuff like that. This one as well, I think it's a pretty basic one to write, but if you don't have the vocab, obviously you cannot write it. And if you don't agree with like the statement that is being made, you also can't write about it. We're just going to the long transactioneel. Now, it's very important with the transactional writing that you stick to the format, okay? It's sticking to the format is very important, and keep it simple. I don't have everything here. Like, there are some things that I just believe you shouldn't do. Like, if you have the options to do a business letter, why? There's so many things in the layout that can go wrong with a business letter that I would just say stay away from it. But the first one is a vriendskaplike brief. Also, why the hell are we still doing letters? Like, what the hell? Anyways. So the first one is a vriendskaplike brief, friendly letter. So use personal pronouns. Remember that the language you use can be somewhat informal depending on who you're writing it to. So like if you're writing to your best friend, like, yeah, you're not going to be like super, super formal with them now, are you? So just like there on the side, okay, is sort of what you need to write down. So like it's the address. So, and remember in Afrikaans, it is the name of the street before the number, because logically you look for the name of the street before you look for the number. Then like the area, the city, the code, and then the date. There is no space, okay? And then you start with leave and then whatever the name is, then you leave a space open. Then you have like your introduction paragraph, and immediately like you state why you're writing the letter. You can mention that you missed them or whatever, but immediately we have to know what you're writing about. So if you're writing to your friend to tell them that you broke your toe, we need to see that immediately in the introduction. Then your body paragraph, which just go into detail about the main idea. So you will tell in detail how you broke your toe. And then the conclusion paragraph V, it's just one or two sentences ending off your letter. Just like, yo, I told you the story. I hope it's going well. I miss you a lot. Come and visit soon. Blah, 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 blah. And then you will leave a line open, and then you will say like liefde or groete, and then your name. You don't necessarily have to add your surname. I would hope that your friend knows who you are. Okay, so it depends sort of on who you write to, but if you can add your surname if it's like maybe you're just writing a friendly letter to like a random stranger. Then a langer e-post, which makes much more sense because we actually send emails. So read the instructions carefully. Are you sending the email to family or friend or a colleague or boss or company? This will help you to see if you should use formal or informal language there. So obviously a friendly letter is informal because it's a friendly letter, but with an email, we don't get a thing like an informal email or formal email, so you just need to read the instruction. But just make sure that you have 3 paragraphs, similar content to that of a letter. And then this is just how you start your email. So you would have to say on and then to, like so who you're sending it to. CC, it's basically like someone you tag in the email. And then the topic, okay, die onderwerp. So that's how you start it. 3 paragraphs, similar to the letter where it's like liewe, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. And then liefde, and then your name or surname. The next one is a toespraak, which is a speech. It says decide on the style that you want to use before you start writing. Establish the when, where, why, audience, and what. This will help you with the tone of your speech. If you are doing a speech in your assembly about, poetry competition or poetry in general, you will not be very formal because the people you are talking to are teenagers. Okay, so you need to keep that in mind. Who are you talking to? The introduction has to be very catchy. Start with a quote or start a stat or something similar. Okay, so very important in a speech. Like you might know in assembly, if someone starts their speech really boring, like in a boring way, you zone out. You don't even care what they say after that. It has to really catch from the beginning, and it also has to have a good conclusion. So use short sentences with clear ideas and examples. Okay, 3 to 4 paragraphs, like maybe 3, depending on the word count. Then the fourth one is an onderhoud, so an interview. So you interviewing someone. So ask personal questions and questions about something the interview is involved with. So if you are having an interview with a netball player, you can't ask them about how they play cricket, if you understand what I'm saying. So you have to like fake know things about them. So remember to leave a line open in between each person speaking. That's really important. And then don't greet each other for 5 million lines. Please do not say hello, hoe gaan dit? Goed met jou. Nee, goed, dankie. Like, that is silly. Like, that should not be happening. In an interview, you'd basically say, like, start maybe, like, with the first question. It's like, it's just someone to Jan. It'd be like, just someone else to Jan. Hello, Jan. Thank you for being here. I see that you're bringing out a new album. Please tell us more, or, like, what the inspiration for the album was. So then, as you can see here, you will usually draw in like a pencil line here to show you where you should stop writing, okay? Please erase that pencil line afterwards. It should not be there. So if you draw a line for the names, remember to erase it when you are done, okay? And leave a line open in between each person speaking. Then a dialogue, similar layouts to an interview. Any information about the speaker, like if they are rolling their eyes, etc., should be added in brackets before the person speaks. You can create a short, like one sentence scenario before you start with the dialogue if you want to. Remember to leave a line open in between each person speaking. Once again, don't greet each other for 5 million lines. Depending on who the dialogue is with, you might be able to use informal language, not too informal, but if it's you talking to your friend, obviously, I mean, I'm just going to be honest, I've seen teenagers, because I work in an all-girls school, teenage girls sometimes don't even greet their friends when they start talking. They would immediately be like, did you see what happened yesterday? As opposed to, hi, did you see what happened yesterday? Then a tydskrif article, a magazine article. Okay, the header needs to be short and catchy. Use alliteration or pun, like a play on words. Add who the writer of the article is before you start the first paragraph. So you would say dear, which means by, and then blah, 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 blah. The style and tone is personal and should speak to the readers. So check who you are writing for. If you're writing for Teenage Magazine, you obviously have to cater your language to a teenage perspective. You should add names, places, or any other details in the article. The paragraphs are short, okay? And then you can write in columns 2 to 3, the way it is in a magazine, but make sure to erase the lines after you've added them. Okay, and then we add the shorter transactional, the core transactional. Once again, format, super, super, super important. If there is the option to do instructions, do instructions. Okay, instructions are beautiful, chef's kiss, difficult to mess up. So it just says follow chronological order. If you're telling someone how to make coffee, you will not tell them to get the cup out after they've poured in the water, you know? Okay, number the instructions and write them one under the other. And then start your sentences with a verb. Instruction starts with verbs. You're not going to be nice. You're not going to say like, please get out the blah, 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 blah. You would say like, if you're making coffee, you would say 1, put water in the kettle. 2, switch on the kettle. 3, get your cup ready as the water's boiling, stuff like that. Okay, so keep it short and simple. You don't need to really add reasons to why you have to do something. It's just giving the instructions. Okay, I said that. So you don't need to add an explanation for each step instruction. You can maybe do that for 1 or 2. Like if you're giving instructions on how to make coffee, you can say add marshmallows instead of sugar since it melts and sweetens the coffee. Okay, so it's just maybe if you're doing something a little bit different, just add the reason why, but you don't need to do that for everything, because remember the word count for this is usually like 80 to 100 words. That's very little. So aanwysings, directions. So follow chronological order, number the instructions and write them one under the other. Start your sentence with a verb. Make sure your directions are clear. So if you're telling someone how to get from your school to your house, you cannot make it confusing because it has to be easy to follow. If you are giving directions to reach a destination, indicate directions, streets, landmarks. When I'm saying directions, I'm saying you need to say links, which means left, or rechts, which means right, okay? You can have to mention the street names, even if you make them up landmarks. So you can say there is a Shell garage on your regterkant. So there's a Shell garage on your right hand side, stuff like that. And then if you're given directions to build something, add names specific to what is being built. I mean, the chances are very slim that you would get something like that. It's usually directions to a place, and they'll sometimes give you like a small little map, and you have to like write the directions from there. Then a dagboek inskrywing, a diary entry. You talk about daily things that happen. You evaluate the day and what maybe happened to you. It is very personal, so use personal pronouns. Ek, jy, ons, my. You do not need to describe to your diary who the people are, okay? You would say ek. You don't need to say like ek Susan, because it's your diary, okay? Keep your sentences short and to the point. There has to be a date. And you have to start with Liewe dagboek, which means dear diary. And then write maximum 2 paragraphs, and please read the instructions. If they say you need to write a diary entry for 2 days, then you need to do it for 2 days. So it's very personal. So make sure that that's reflective. You know, like if you had a really bad day, you would like use maybe an exclamation mark at the first time to say like, I had such a bad day, because it's your diary. You're the only one that's essentially reading it. And then the last one is a plakkaat of a strooibiljet. So it's a poster. So just remember, a poster gives information. Okay? It was like a poster about like the dangers of driving over the speed limit. You would give information about that. So, and then the same with the strooibiljet flyer. So you can take a variety of forms, make use of slogans and logos, must be visually appealing. It's very important that it looks really good. Figurative language and poetic devices should be used to make an impact, metaphors, similes, alliteration, repetition, rhyming, etc. You should have a paragraph on your poster or flyer, and keep sentences short. So just remember, you are giving information about something. If you're, for example, doing an advert, yes, it also has to be visually appealing, use alliteration and stuff like that, but you're selling something. Okay, where a poster just sort of gives you information about things. So yeah, everyone, I hope that helped. And good luck with your exam tomorrow. If you want to expand some of your Afrikaans vocab tonight, there is an app that I'll leave in the description box. It's an Afrikaans like dictionary app, and it's really good. So you can type in a word in English, and I'll give you the Afrikaans one. And yeah, sure. I'm so sorry that you have to do a rewrite. Because of a few silly people. You are probably the strongest matric group I've ever met, because wow, you've been through a lot. But yeah, tot ziens almal.